to move on to the next step, which is making this a major scale. Now, the way that I learned, I had to hop around and like learn a bunch of new shapes and then like figure out how everything tied in together. But I'm going to try to keep this as simple as possible by using the same shape in a different area to make a major scale out of it, a major pentatonic scale. So all we have to do, and this is true for any key that you're in, all we have to do to turn a minor pentatonic scale into a major pentatonic scale of the same key is take the shape and move it down 3 frets. So if we're on the 10th fret, we're going to move it down 3 frets to the 7th fret. And then boom, you're in a major key. I'll just give you a quick example of how that works. I'll play minor and then I'll hop down to major. So you can see this vastly changes how our phrasing sounds. You know, it's going from a major key to a minor key, which is probably the most jarring thing you can do musically. But we're going to learn how to do that tastefully. We're going to learn how to use that in a way that sounds really good. So, like I said, just move it down 3 frets. But what this does is it changes our root locations. So we have to go through the exact same process as we did for the major scale. Even though it's the same shape, it's drastically different. And that's something I want you guys to understand, is that by moving the position that we're in, we're changing the notes' relationships to the backing track. So no longer is our first finger, our third finger, and then our first finger on the high E string are root locations. They've changed to the 4th finger on the E string, the 1st finger on the G, and then the 4th finger on the high E string. So let's kind of explore that a little bit more. The first thing you want to do is exactly what we did last time. Play through the scale with the backing track, just front to back, to get your ear for the new tonality. It's going to sound bad sometimes, and sometimes it's going to sound good. But all we're doing is kind of getting our ear familiar with what these notes are about to do while we're playing through the backing track. So let's go ahead and do that. Great, so you can tell it's very different than the minor tonality. Now let's go ahead and move on to the next step, which is isolating the scale octaves. Now, like I said, since we shifted position, everything is different. So the scale octaves have changed. Now they go from the 10th fret of the E string with our pinky up to the 7th fret of the G with our first finger. So here's our new scale octave. So I'm not going to go through all that again. Just play that octave over the backing track for a while. Get yourself familiar with the phrasing inside of it. And then the next scale octave in that new position goes from the 1st finger on the 7th fret of the G up to the 4th finger on the 10th fret of the high E string. So get yourself familiar with that scale octave and phrase it just like we did using the minor pentatonic first position. And then we do the exact same thing. We identify our roots, which are now on the 10th fret of the E, the 1st finger on the 7th fret of the G, and then 4th finger on the 10th fret of the high E. And then we just only give ourselves those 3 notes to begin phrasing. And it seems like a redundant step, but just do it anyway. I mean, the more you do this, the better you're going to get at it. It's frustrating enough as it is, so just try to give yourself a little bit of room to learn. And then we do the exact same thing we did last time, and we just kind of phrase around our root notes. We're just going to take these same steps, and we're actually going to be using these same steps for pretty much any new scale I'm going to throw at you. So yeah, just take those root notes you have and phrase around them. And then give yourself the entire scale to phrase out of it once you're done doing that around all of the roots. So then you just kind of, you get the idea. Now, the next step is adding those notes that we can bend. Some of them stay the same and some of them have changed. For example, the first finger on the G now won't sound good if you bend it, but the third finger on the G still sounds good. Because if you notice, the G is our root, that first finger on the G is the root, and bending away from a root is just kind of a really weird thing to do. And we have new ones, like the 9th fret of the D string with our third finger. We can add that in for a little bit of flavor. And we can still bend that third finger on the G however we want. So the third finger on the G now becomes the minor third and the major third if we bend it all the way up. Now, another place we can bend is that first finger on the high E string. That's the same thing as the third finger on the D. We can bend that up a little bit to add a little bit of flavor. And that's a lot of fun. And like we did last time, just kind of add those in one at a time and really give yourself room to explore and like find everything about these notes, everything that's good, everything that's bad, and build habits around them, and like just discover what they sound like. And then the next thing we do is we start adding notes into the scale that we actually play. So the note I want to add to this scale is the minor 3. So last time we added a major 3 to a minor scale, and in this case we're going to be adding a minor 3 to a major scale. Now, for as much as I loved adding a major 3 to a minor scale, I love this one probably 900,000 times more. So the location for these is going to be on the 8th fret of the A string, and also the 10th fret of the G with our pinky. Add this one note into the scale and you should be having a lot of fun. So let's just go ahead, because I love that. I mean, honestly, I'm going to go ahead and say favorite tonality. I'm going to regret saying that tomorrow. But either way, have fun with it. This is my favorite pentatonic major minor thingy. We're adding in that flat 3 and make it fun. I love it. Yay! Sorry, forgot to end on the root. So yeah, we've added in the major 3. There's a lot of room for fun there. And then you can add in the flat 7, which is going to be the second finger on that 8th fret of the high E string, and also the 10th fret of the D string with our 4th finger. So now we end up with this really crazy scale, but it's all built around, the minor pentatonic shape in a major key. So it ends up in its entirety looking a little bit like this. And this is just a lot of fun. I mean, honestly, just have fun with it. Phrase around. Discover your own voice. That's another thing, is that I'm not really giving anybody particular licks to play, because I want you to kind of build your own voice around the notes that are given to you. How everybody approaches a note is going to be very different from player to player to player. So just, spend your time discovering how you like the sound. What do you like the sound of? And that's something I'd like to really stress real quick, is that, as a student, you spend a lot of your time comparing yourself to other guitar players. But I don't think we spend enough time trying to discover ourselves as our own guitar player. So like I said, the reason I'm not really giving specific licks and phrases to use here is because this is an opportunity for you to begin discovering your own voice. And that's really important. To know what your own voice is. So find out what you like the sound of or don't like the sound of, and don't worry if other people don't like it, and don't worry if it doesn't sound like anybody else, and don't worry if it does sound like somebody else. Just find what you like the sound of. This is an opportunity to explore your own voice. And that's super important, and that's, I think, something that a lot of people struggle with. a lot of people end up just kind of like, I don't sound good because I don't sound like blank, or so-and-so is so much better than me. The comparison just needs to get thrown out the window for a while. It's important sometimes, but I mean, really spend some time discovering who you are as a guitar player. While you're discovering your voice, really start owning the notes. You know, you'll feel kind of weird and you'll feel like I'm not really doing it, and the reason you don't sound like you want to sound is because you do feel that way. The moment you really kind of throw all that apprehension out the window and just let yourself do what you want to do and commit to it and do it with like attitude and do it with like confidence, you'll end up sounding like you want to sound. The difference between somebody who knows what they're doing and somebody who doesn't know what they're doing is the person who knows what they're doing is committed to it. They're really confident about the note that they're playing. And that's why I think it's important to stress that it does not take a lot of notes to sound good. Because I can make 3 notes, you know, to the common person sound really, really good just because I'm playing them with confidence. I'm jumping in there and I'm just hitting simple stuff. You know, I'm only using 3 notes, but I'm playing them with, you know, attitude and like conviction. You know, I'm really putting something behind the notes. I'm not just playing the 12th fret of the D string and then the 10th fret of the G and then the 10th fret of the D. I'm not doing that. I'm actually expressing myself through those notes. So this is an opportunity not only for you to find your voice as a guitar player, but for you to begin sounding like you know what you're doing.